Chapter 3, Littagale, The Proposal. One happy day tended to blend into the next happy day in Marshwood, but working in Maxwell the carpenter's shop was Littagale's favorite way to break up the monotony. Their current project was building a hut for the village market. Littagale worked at a bench in the open yard, and she once again bit her tongue between her teeth in concentration. The length of wood she was measuring would be an important crossbeam. She blew off sawdust from the recent cut and held the measuring stick to double-check her work. It lined up with the mark she'd made for their next cut, and the angle was perfect. Finished with her task, Littagale looked around the yard and saw the other builders happily at work in the sunshine. "Excellent job, Princess," called Maxwell as he came to inspect her work. The tall, burly, bearded man ran a hand along the beam to where her mark was. He smiled at her. "Couldn't have done it better myself." "Thank you, sir." Littagale wiped her hands on her work apron. Maxwell hefted the beam onto a nearby cart, and Littagale looked past him and saw one of her father's young pages approaching. The page bowed. "Princess Littagale, your parents request that you join them immediately." That sounds ominous, thought Littagale with a frown. She took off her apron, smoothed down her casual blue dress, and walked with the page back through the village toward the castle. Townspeople along the way waved to her in happy greeting, and she called out hellos to everyone she knew. Which was everyone, for Marshwood is a small and friendly kingdom. She patted peasant children's heads and scratched the ears of dogs as she walked by. Passing a few shops, her mouth drooled from the smells of fresh bread and cheese. When they reached the entrance of the white stone castle, Littagale hurried to follow the page inside. The grand, polished halls were mostly empty with everyone at chores, and Littagale thought it funny how her footsteps echoed off the stone floor. The page finally led her to a grand oak door, and here he left her with a bow. Littagale paused to take a breath, then pushed open the creaking door. Inside, she saw the formal royal meeting room. Large windows along one wall held stained glass pictures of valiant ancestors. There was King Ebert, depicted as fighting off black knights of Archwild. King Ramsay's blue coat caught the sun beautifully. King Henry and Queen Alice held hands and gazed at each other with loving smiles forever locked on their portraits. King Edward was surrounded by red and yellow swirls of fire as Tor the Intolerant attacked from Mount Shadow. Down the middle of the room stretched a long table. On the far end of the table, the king and queen stood by their seats. Dozens of open scrolls lay on the table in front of them. Her father fidgeted with one of the scrolls, but he and Mattea quietly watched Littagale approach and didn't say a word. When she reached them, Littagale curtsied. She felt very nervous, and she looked down to see her ring was glowing yellow. She tried to stay chipper. "What's up?" Her father sighed. "There's no putting it off any longer, Littagale. You're starting to get marriage proposals." Her eyes widened. "I am? From who?" She looked at the scrolls. "Every prince for 1,000 miles, Wesick said with a snort. He looked back at her kindly. "I'm sorry. You're 19, and I can't reject these offers anymore." "But I'm only 19. She clung to the chair in front of her. Her hands started to sweat, and she felt herself panicking. "We know, darling," said Mattea kindly, "but for over a year they've asked after our plans for you. We can't keep your suitors away any longer." Littagale looked at her father. "But you and my mom were 26 when you got married. Why do I have to get married now?" Wesick chuckled in memory. "Your grandfather called your mother a spinster when she turned 22. Believe me, waiting so long to get married is not the norm." Mattea faced Littagale with great sympathy. "It's not fair to be forced into marriage so young, I know. Believe me, I know. My father married me off when I was only 18 to Nolan's father. I can't say what your future holds, but—" She smiled at Wesick. "But these things have a way of working out, in the end." The king squeezed his wife's hand. Littagale slapped a hand to her face and asked her stepmother, "So you're hoping I get kidnapped by a dragon like you did? Sure, you lucked out and Dad saved you, but being a dragon's captive doesn't sound like a great alternative to getting married off." Mattea gave Littagale a strange little smile. Putting her face in her hands, Littagale tried to calm down. "I'm sorry," she finally said when she lowered her hands. "I mean, I know I should be better prepared for this. It's all just so messed up that I'm going to be queen of an entire kingdom, but I can't decide for myself if or when I get married." Her father sighed. "Unfortunately, Littagale, this is how the world works. I took a lot of heat from my fellow nobles when I named you my heir, not Nolan. You were my firstborn, my blood heir, and I believe the throne was your right, but that has caused Unusual complications. Littagale understood. It hadn't been easy in school, as she was the only girl being trained for leadership. Most of her teachers hadn't known what to do with her. The kings of other kingdoms, Wesick went on, simply won't let me get around some other customs. Wedding you off is one such custom. I'm sorry, but part of your unavoidable responsibility to your future kingdom is to get married soon, whether we like it or not. But I had so many plans. Now... Littagale looked down and saw that her ring was glowing bright red with anxiety. She tried not to cry. Once I get married, it's going to be all court business all the time, isn't it? I'll have responsibilities as queen-in-waiting. I'll have wife jobs. Mattea sighed and gazed at the stained glass window of the dragon behind Littagale. Her father looked down at the many scrolls on the table and said, I'm sorry, but we've delayed all we can. I have to send replies to these princes. Is there any way in particular that you'd like to go about this? Do you want formal meetings with your suitors? A tournament of valor to win your hand? Ugh. Littagale hoped he was joking. So I'd be like an actual trophy wife? Neither of her parents looked happy about this, but they didn't disagree. It's not their fault, thought Littagale. They love me. They've always done what is best for me. This is just the way of things. I have to find a way to deal with it. She tried to think. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go cry for a while. I need some pout time. This had been something adorable she'd said as a toddler that they never let her forget. Mattea nodded. Of course, dear. I'll come see you later once we've made some arrangements. Littagale curtsied to excuse herself and then hurried out of the royal meeting room. Later that night, Littagale lay on her big fluffy bed and stared up at the stars through her skylight. She'd locked herself away in the very tallest tower of the castle, which was supposed to be a nightmare-causing situation for princesses. However, Littagale had always thought it was an excellent way to get some personal time. This time, however, someone knocked on her door. Rolling out of bed, Littagale untwisted her nightgown and tiptoed over the cool stone floor. She reached her door and pulled back the bolt. The door creaked open to reveal Mattea, dressed in a nightgown. She held a lantern. Hey, how are you doing? Littagale held up her ring, which was back to yellow with nervousness. She returned to her bed. The door creaked again as Mattea shut it, and she joined Littagale to sit on the bed. Your father has decided to take the tournament route to find you a winning suitor. Ugh! Littagale flopped over to put her head in a pillow. Are you kidding me? What? Littagale lifted her face out of the pillow. Are you kidding me? That's like the worst possible option. Now we'll be stuck with whatever macho idiot can throw the javelin the farthest. Is that really how you and Dad want to find someone to rule the kingdom by my side? Well, we thought... This is just awful, she whimpered. I know it's not you guys' fault, but I wanted to get married someday when I found the right person. I wanted to fall in love first. Mattea paused and thought. When my father married me off to my first husband, I grew to love him. It was not the same as how I love your father, but I did love him. He gave me Nolan, and when he died, I was grateful I had Nolan to remember him by. Littagale looked at her stepmother with respect. I don't know if I could be as brave about it as you were, and you were even younger than me. Maybe it was stupid of me, but I always imagined falling in love and then getting married, like my parents, or like you and Dad. She made a face. I mean, I know there were extraordinary circumstances involved with you and Dad, but you did love each other first. Mattea chuckled. When your father rescued me from the dragon, I thought he was the most wonderful man I'd ever seen. A lot of other men had tried to rescue me, but your father, she smiled. I could tell he was different. He asked about my safety first. He didn't charge in and boast about being able to defeat Tor and win me. He held up that massive sword of his to challenge Tor, and the first words he said were, Is the lady safe? That meant a lot to me. There are many reasons I've fallen in love with your father over the years, but that was the first. Littagale sighed and looked up through her skylight for inspiration before facing Mattea again. I want to do my duty and be the queen you've taught me to be. I just wish there was more time before all this has to happen. I wanted to have an adventure, get away, be my own person for a while. Now... She tossed a pillow against her headboard helplessly. Mattea's lovely blue eyes traced over Littagale's face for a long moment. Littagale, do you trust that your father and I know what's best for you? I do. I just didn't know you'd think this was best. We don't. Of course we don't. But there are customs that have been around hundreds of years and will be around for hundreds more. Mattea took a breath. Which means we have to be very clever about getting around them. Littagale had a flicker of hope. What do you mean? I mean, my daughter, that there are parts of my story you don't know. There are parts your father and I kept secret. Some parts are outright lies. For example, I did not twirl around singing and dancing in a meadow with my father's sheep. You've heard me sing. Do you really think I'd torture sheep like that? Littagale chuckled, but was confused. Well then, what? With a spunky flash in her eye, Mattea rose from the bed and smoothed out her nightgown. We can't hold off marriage forever, but I have a way to give you more time, if you trust me. And this, dear girl, will take a lot of trust. She reached out a hand toward Littagale on the bed. Do you trust me? Littagale, liking the mysterious smile on her mother's face, rose from the bed and reached for Mattea's outstretched hand.